Thursday. Welcome to the Nomadic Network. We're just gonna give a minute for everyone to come filing in. Welcome. And while you're waiting, why don't we utilize that chat box and let me know where you're calling in from and how many Nomadic Network events you've been to. If this is your first one, big welcome. If this is like your 47th one, welcome anyways, because we love seeing, you know, Nomadic Network lifers on the call. So I'm just gonna give a minute for everyone to file in, use the chat, say hello. We're gonna be using that chat a lot today for questions, to connect with people, drop your social media handles, everything. So welcome. Hope everyone has your coffee or your tea. Oh, well, it's morning for me on the West Coast, so I think it might be later for you, depending on where you are. My name is Leah. I am the chapter leader for the LA chapter of the Nomadic Network. I also help Erica host some of these TNN events, and I have my own travel podcast called Ticket to Anywhere Podcast on YouTube and anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'm so excited to lead this virtual event today for Nomadic Network and with Emmanuela, because I think it's an incredibly important and relevant topic that, you know, a lot of us are still learning about. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and do a little intro, share a few slides, and then we can get to it. Boom, boom, boom. All right, so like I said, Nomadic Network, we are started by Nomadic Matt. We're basically carrying his vision of traveling cheaper, better, and longer all throughout the globe through Nomadic Network, and we were launched in 22 cities before the pandemic happened. So these used to be live events. We got a few meetings in before, you know, coronavirus said we all had to stay 6 feet apart. So now we changed to virtual events, which is kind of great because now we're connecting with people from all over the world. It's not just people in your own little city. And you could be, you know, on the beach in Thailand in your hammock watching these events, or you could be on your couch at home in the US. And now you can connect with people all over the world, no matter what time zone. So a few things to keep in mind: you can turn your camera on. We love seeing your beautiful faces. Just don't get the bad lighting like I'm catching today. You'll be muted for the remainder. I mean, you'll be muted for the presentation. We'll have a Q&A after the presentation. So like I said, utilize the chat, ask as many questions as you want in the chat. Start your question with a question so that I can pull it out and Emmanuela and I can chat about it later. Replays are available to Patreon members, patreon.com/nomadicmat, and we'll learn a little more on the next slide. We're here to learn, we're here to have fun, we're here to connect, we're here to definitely ask questions. This is that safe space for all of us travelers to come and ask your difficult questions. This is why, you know, Emmanuela is here, especially on today's important topic. So our speakers are doing this out of the kindness of their heart and their passion, and they're gonna she's gonna drop some knowledge on y'all today. So we're incredibly grateful, especially you bringing that beautiful Florida beach background. So like I said, Patreon community, you know, if you feel that these events bring value to you, we'd love for you to join and support the Patreon community for Nomadic Mat and Nomadic Network. You'll see all these bullets state what you can get as being part of the community, and there's different levels as well. Event replays, personal stories, live Q&As, those are the best, you guys. Free signed books, free guides, never before seen photos, special Facebook group, etc. If you can't join the Patreon community, you can't, like, you know, make that like monthly commitment. We are doing one-time donation via PayPal. So this is a great way to help sustain this wonderful travel community. So with that, let me stop the share real quick. Let me introduce Emmanuela. So before we get into it, Emmanuela Stanislaus, she is the face behind Jetsetter's Diary travel blog, jetsettersdiary.com. She's a 30-something travel blogger who concentrates on the Caribbean, the African Diaspora, as well as the US. And she's also the founder of Dr. Emmanuela Consulting, where she helps individuals and organizations get unstuck through their services as a career coach, diversity researcher, and consultant. And she's such a boss lady that she recently earned her PhD, where her research centers on race, ethnicity, and gender among Black women. So, Emmanuela, I'll let you go ahead and take the floor.
Thank you so much, Leah. And I'm so excited to have everyone here today. Like everyone's from all over the place, which is exciting, in Armenia too. I need to know who that person is so I could go and visit, you know? So I want to see about sharing my screen. And as I do that, I do want to bring attention to my background, which is really showing where I'm at. Hopefully everyone can see my screen right now. Okay, awesome. So yeah, my background is where I am, which is the lovely Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I did see that someone is here from Miami, so they might be familiar with that beach scene. And so today I am here to talk to you all about activating your BIPOC allyship in travel and beyond. And so we have a little bit of time today, and you know, just so you know, this is just a taste. I can go really deep into it, but I felt like there were just some key things that I wanted to focus on, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. And so Leah did an amazing job with introducing me, and I just wanted to share just a little bit more. I consider myself a multi-passionate professional. Like she said, I'm doing a lot of things. I'm doing the most. I'm a travel blogger / content creator. I also have a day job, which wasn't a part of my bio, where I work in higher education, administration, and run a career center, a university career center, where I work with Fortune 500 companies and help them recruit and retain diverse talent. I'm also a career coach and doctorate coach, because like she shared, I did just complete my doctorate. So I'm officially Dr. Stanislaus to all of you all, but you can call me Emmanuela because we're friends here. And so I work at helping BIPOC women accomplish their career and academic goals through that. And then lastly, I'm a diversity strategist and researcher, where I assist companies with diversity and equity initiatives and projects. So I do that through my newest venture, which is Dr. Emmanuela Consulting. So I want to talk a little bit, because of my background in higher education, I always want to come in and talk about like the learning objectives, so you all know what we're going to be talking about today. And so some of the key things are, what is an ally? Why is being an ally important? We're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be to do performative allyship. And then hopefully with some of the things that I share, there'll be tangible steps for how you can get, you know, past feeling stuck during this time, and see how you can support Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So when I say BIPOC, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And so this conversation started way back in June with Erica. We had a conversation, and she invited me to just give a presentation. And at that time, everything seemed so urgent, right? And so it's so interesting that the urgency is still here, which makes me a little bit hopeful. But some people might also be feeling a little, you know, helpless at the same time. But some of the things that I want to set the stage for this conversation is that the presentation is not meant to cover everything that there is to race, racism, white supremacy, and all of the isms. Additionally, I'm situating this conversation within the context of the U.S. It's important to know that that's what I'm talking about, although anti-Black racism exists throughout the world, thanks to things like colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade that really worked to subjugate Black people and further oppress them, and also forward negative views and stereotypes about Black people, which is kind of what set the stage for what we're dealing with today. Additionally, I am not the voice for all Black people. There is no one voice for Black people. Black people are not a monolith. And with that, there are varying cases to the Black experience. And so what I am sharing is based off of my experience as well as my research, but please know that, you know, there are various ways of looking at this. And so again, I'm hoping to share some things, and then we're gonna have some time for Q&A. So how did we get here? So much has happened, even in this year, right? And we even talked about June, and June was 3 months ago, but in the year 2020, 1 month is like a year, right? And so it seems so long ago, but it really wasn't. And so when we talk about like, how did we get here? I know some of you may be surprised at the present day racial unrest that's taking place right now in the US specifically, although we know that worldwide there has been a lot of protests, all in the name of, you know, racial justice. But some of these things might be surprising because one, you know, as in general, white people do not, they do not face racism. So if it's something that doesn't happen within the lives of white people, they don't really see it, right? Additionally, we have pundits and different people who are forwarding a post-racial society, especially after the election of President Barack Obama, right? However, for Black people living in the US and those who travel, you know, worldwide, we know all too well that racial inequities, structural racism, anti-Black racism is very much still alive and was very much still alive, and is a part of the fabric of the foundation of the US when you really think about the history of the US. It permeates through the education system, healthcare, housing, legal system, and pretty much anything that you can think of. And so when we're talking about, you know, kind of what led everything to like what we're experiencing now, we have to go back to February 23rd, where Ahmaud Arbery, an unarmed 25-year-old Black man was fatally shot while jogging in Glenn County, Georgia. He'd been pursued and confronted by two white residents who were father and son, and were armed and driving a pickup truck. And in this particular case, nothing really happened until a video was you know, made public, and the father and son duo were not arrested until May, right? So we have that case. On March 13th, Louisville police officers knocked down the apartment door of 26-year-old Breonna Taylor, serving a no-knock search warrant for drug suspicions. Police fired several shots during the encounter, which led to her death. And until this day, we're now in September, 6 months later, no arrests have been made to date. And there's been no acknowledgement by the Louisville Police Department about the wrongdoing of her death. Although this week there were reports that her mother, Breonna Taylor's mother, was awarded $12 million for the wrongful death of her daughter. However, that is still not justice, right? the police are still working for the department, and again, nothing has been done and no arrests have been done. And then we have George Floyd, who was killed by Minneapolis police. A video circulates showing the officer kneeling on Floyd's neck for nearly 9 minutes while Floyd pleaded for his life, repeating, "I can't breathe." I think that was like the tipping point that brought us to where we're at now, right? And so we have specifically in these examples, and again, this is nothing new, Black men and women are killed at the hands of cops and vigilantes at crazy rates. And so I think what has happened is because of this and most people being at home, this created even more of a heightened sense of what was going on. And then, you know, most recently we have Jacob Blake, who's another unarmed man who was shot in the back by police officers in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And then, you know, to add insult to injury, so he didn't die, but he was shot and he was left paralyzed. And so the insult to injury is while he was in the hospital, he was handcuffed to the bed. And again, it wasn't until public outcry that the handcuffs were removed. And for me, in all of these situations and other situations that we don't know about, we have a blatant disregard for Black lives and the Black humanity. And, you know, one of the things that I definitely want to share too is, you know, there's the, you know, talk about, you know, where do we go now? What do we do? But, you know, in general, you know, Black people want an equal playing field. They want people to see the humanity in them. They want to be treated fairly. And you know, are not necessarily looking for any type of handout or anything that belongs to anyone else. It's the acknowledgement that, you know, these systems were put into place to put Black people in a certain light and to be subjugated and oppressed. So then, you know, a couple of weeks after the death of Mr. Floyd, we have the infamous Black Square. And I'm sure some of you have seen this or heard about it, but you know, if not, this was a movement that was actually created by two Black women in the music industry to bring awareness within the music industry, but it was co-opted by industries like across industries. I can't think of the word that I want to say, but it was co-opted and became this Blackout Tuesday movement on June 9th that, you know, you could not, you know, be oblivious to. It was everywhere. You would swipe on your social media and you would see that. And the thing about this piece is that it was interesting because some of the biggest brands were doing this. And when they did this, what they were saying is that Black Lives Matter, right? And this was huge because up until this point, most brands, and maybe some of your, you know, friends or family members or whatever, did not believe in Black Lives Matter. They probably still don't, but some of these brands, they didn't have that stance before, right? So they would put this Black square up and to show solidarity. But the problem is that the act was very performative and that most of these brands didn't actively take steps to truly show that Black lives really mattered, right? Their organizations didn't show that Black lives mattered through their hiring practices. They didn't show that it mattered through the individuals that took up space in the leadership roles that they had within their organizations, their board memberships, or even the marketing that they have. You didn't see, people who look like me throughout all of these things, right? And what they did was that they simply placed the black square and moved back to what it was like prior to this. And so that's problematic. So what I want to talk a little bit about is like, how does this even apply to the travel space? And so like the racial reckoning that's happening right now and illuminating, how the racial inequities exist in virtually all spaces is really also showing how it shows up in our beloved travel space, right? Like travel is not immune from these practices. And really, it doesn't take long to see it if you're really looking for it. And so like, I would challenge everyone on this call to open up a magazine, one of your favorite travel magazines, and see how the travel space prioritizes the stories of white people. Again, it's, opening those magazine pages. And when I do that, I see that the writers are mostly white, the photographers are white, the travelers that are depicted are always white. And when you see Black people depicted in these spaces, it's in roles of servitude. And they're often catering to the white travelers. Like you'll see them as, a butler or, whatever the case might be. And I know, in my travel space as a travel blogger, I mean, I'm traveling, one, I know tons of Black people who are traveling. And so why is it that it's always this position, right? So challenging those notions. Social media is the same thing when you're looking at these travel brands. Travel conferences largely feature white men and white women. And, most recently, this is like, as of last month, I saw a presentation about diversity that was done by a travel organization. And they literally had no shame in having a panel of all, it was 5 white men, older white men, that were leading a conversation about diversity. And, that's not to say that, white people can't talk about diversity, of course, but some of these things are glaring as to who's not a part of these conversations. And how is it that you might have like, a space. I'm trying to use more inclusive words. One of the words this phrase I want to say is like a blind spot, but I really, I can't think of another word besides that, but if you all can help me in the chat. But, that is definitely an area of growth. Let's use that, an area of growth that people are not seeing. And so for me, what does that say? And I would say that it communicates that Black stories are not valued, right? And that Black people don't travel, and Black and brown people are there to serve white people. So I ask, what are you doing to disrupt what the travel industry does and how they engage in anti-Black practices overall? So I want to talk a little bit about allyship, right? Because that's how you can potentially do that. And allyship is someone from a non-marginalized group who uses their privilege to advocate for marginalized group members, right? So when we talk about allies, it is not engaging in white saviorship. And for those who are not familiar with that, white savior, the concept of white savior is helping non-white people, but when you do so, it's having a self-serving element to it, right? Another piece to it is jumping in to help, but not really stepping back and understanding the history of what's going on there. And also not taking account the role that you might be taking in reproducing the inequities that already exist. And so, you know, being an ally is going to take educating yourself on issues, you know, literally using your resources to help marginalized groups, whether it's financial resources, whether it's resources that are like tied to time and things like that. And so, you know, that's what we're really talking about today. So again, with allyship, a lot of times people may engage in performative allyship. And what that really means is, or what I really want to engage in is the questions on the right. Like, if you're about to do something, you should really ask yourself, you know, the questions on the right. These are just a few. And it's, you know, are you centering your feelings? Are you concerned about how others view you? How does this work show up in your politics? And have you actually done anything? And, you know, when we're talking about performative allyship, it's focused on the person instead of the marginalized group. And the person engaging in performative allyship is worried about being seen and ends up doing more harm to the marginalized group. And so, you know, for example, you may want to donate to a certain group that's doing great work to the community. And then you post the receipt on, you know, your Instagram or whatever to show people what you've donated. And then for me, it's like, you wouldn't have to show that, right? Like, the performances in showing that you've done it, and in also centering that, look at what I did, and wanting like some type of, you know, recognition for what you're doing, right? And so that's what we're talking about when you're centering like yourself or thinking about how other people will view you. When you're an ally, you should really be concerned about how you can be used to further help this marginalized group. How can you be used to dismantle, you know, structural racism and institutional racism, if that makes sense, and not necessarily, you know, doing the work for the praise. Also, you know, putting the verb in allyship is always interrogating the role that you play in upholding the ideals of white supremacy, and, you know, actively working to create change from your privileged position, right? I think one of the things, as everyone's, you know, learning through things, we all have some type of built-in racism and bias, and the job of being about this work, I wouldn't even say about allyship, right? But like, even myself as a Black woman, I am always interrogating what I'm doing and how it might be aligned with oppressing certain groups or certain voices and things like that. And so that's what, you know, kind of like what we're talking about for sure. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about, you know what, I forgot one more thing that I wanted to share about this piece, because I know I kind of, you know, went through that real quick, but like the politics piece. Many times, you know, our politics align with oppressive policies that harm the communities that we claim to want to support. And so that's kind of, you know, what I'm talking about. I don't want to get too deep into that because I know everybody has different things, but I think when you're thinking about, you know, the things that you're throwing your support behind, you have to think about, how does this impact some of the most marginalized groups in society? Not just looking at how it impacts you, but thinking about, okay, what does this mean for, you know, a gay Black man or a gay Black woman or a trans, you know, person. So thinking about those kinds of things will definitely help you to move into that direction. And then the actually doing work, this is not easy work, right? And so we have to, you know, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. All right, so we're gonna go into this again. We're talking about steps to activate your allyship. This is not in the, what is it, exhaustive, sorry, list. And you know, part of it is meant to be a conversation starter, right? And so I just wanted to make sure that we do that. So these are a couple of things. And again, the part of this presentation is like in your travel and beyond, right? How to do your allyship. So this is gonna be like globally, not just, you know, in travel. So first thing, acknowledge your biases. We're not gonna be shy about, I'm sorry. Of course, my dog, someone started knocking on the door. I think it's a delivery, my apologies. So acknowledge your biases and know that we all have them, right? And so that's going to be the biggest key to moving forward. The second thing is educate yourself. You know, the thing about where we are today is, you know, just thinking about how things are set up, especially in our education system, to where we're taught a certain narrative, and Black people traditionally have had to go out and seek information about their history, because history hasn't always been told, or history has always been told from the white male's point of view, right? And also tied to things that they don't want us to know too, right? So you also, you know, want to make sure that you are looking specifically at how can you educate yourself on Black history, on systemic racism, oppression, white privilege, and how that, how we've all been indoctrinated into a certain way of viewing things. I want to say also that education doesn't stop. It is a constant work in progress. I am constantly reading. I am constantly challenging my point of view. I'm constantly consuming, whether it's documentaries or different things. And even when I'm consuming things, I am interrogating things from the viewpoint of what are they trying to tell me, with this? Like, what angle is this author coming from? And so I think it's coming from a critical point of view. And just know that you cannot have a meaningful conversation about race if you haven't been educated. So that's why that is truly important. And so educating yourself on this and about the true history about racism within the US as well as the world. Using your privilege, but also making sure you don't co-opt the movement. And so for this, what I'm saying is use your privilege to speak up for those who are not able to do so. So for example, the workplaces where many microaggressions and racist activities happen, and some people don't even see it, right? Jokes are made at the expense of others. People are excluded from certain things because of, biases. And so, one of the things to, using your privilege is being open to different points of view so that you can open up your mind to seeing how your privilege keeps you from viewing certain things in a different way. And then, in the everyday world that we're living in now, using your privilege is gonna mean, like I said before, maybe donating your money. Maybe you are out there protesting, but again, like, you do not have to go out and protest. And like, there are many ways to protest and to support this movement. And one example could be advocating for real education of the U.S. history to be taught in your child's school. So that's one way that you can do that. Being anti-racist should be the goal. This speaks to the like almost expected reaction of white people in general to reply that, you know, they're not racist when anyone is being critical about a statement or a behavior or something that you've said. And so, you know, not being a racist doesn't mean that you are taking active steps to help those who are systemically oppressed. Again, being anti-racist is the goal, not necessarily. I hope that that makes sense, and through reading and things like that, you know, that should help. But what I'm trying to say is racism, like being called a racist, has really been, you know, one of the biggest I guess offensive things that people can tell you, right? But when you're saying I'm not a racist, that doesn't mean that you're doing anything. It's just saying that you're not a racist. And by saying that you're not a racist, you know, it doesn't tie to like actively helping people who are oppressed. Next is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Being a true ally is challenging. It takes a lot of work. You're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way, and you can't let the mistakes stop you from moving forward or get you, you know, stuck in a particular position. If you make a mistake, which we all do, I make mistakes too. We're all learning. Things are changing. Terms are changing constantly. And so what you do is just, you know, if someone calls you out, thank them for, you know, helping you to move along in your journey of discovery, own up to the mistake, and then commit to doing better. That I think that's like the biggest thing that people want when it comes to being allies. Start with your inner circle. I think the biggest thing is that, you know, I think, again, this ties to being uncomfortable, especially with your inner circle. Those are, you know, people that you care about and you love. And, you know, it's going to be important for you to address problematic behaviors and comments that they make. And part of that is that you can't be effective if you can't have the difficult, you know, conversations with those that you care the most about or that you're the closest with. But, you know, just know that you have to educate yourself to know how to best respond to any of those situations that come up. And, you know, not addressing some of these things kind of, you know, make it to where you are complicit in you know, racism and forwarding racist thoughts. Another thing is not to censor your feelings. And, you know, I put no guilt. And what I mean by that is like, the movement has no time for people who feel guilty. Okay, that's a blunt kind of comment. And what I mean by that is like, once you start educating yourself on the social injustices that happen in the world, your natural, hopefully, some people may not, but your natural reaction will be to get upset, to feel guilty about not knowing about these things in the past. And like, you know, how could I have made it to this age or, you know, through life and not be aware of, you know, how people from underrepresented populations are being, you know, oppressed. And so, you know, what I want you to do is like, yes, okay, that's great to have those feelings, but don't position your feelings while you're going through these things, right? You know, I can give an example, you know, where I went to an event and, you know, they were talking about a book that the group just read. And, you know, there was a woman who just got really upset and she was crying and that sort of thing. And then all of the attention moved over to her and soothing her versus the, you know, the main topic at hand, which is like, how do we get to address, you know, our thoughts and behaviors around, you know, dismantling racism. So That would be, you know, what I want to stress. Like, use that frustrating energy to forward change, to like move forward and change. And then I have, you know, not being defensive as another piece. Being defensive is not helpful. And this is specifically to if someone was to challenge you on something that you did or say. You know, I think a natural reaction would be to be defensive, but, you know, trying to refrain from that natural reaction. And, you know, for me, if someone gets defensive, I know that they need to do more work. They have not done the work. They need to educate themselves more on things instead of, you know, coming in and probably producing more harm, probably producing more trauma to the communities that they are, you know, claiming to be an ally to. Okay, I'm clicking over and sorry, my computer's a little frozen. Hopefully it will wake up. Okay. All right, next slides. All right, so these are my final things with activating your allyship. And one of them is to amplify the voices of BIPOC people, right? And so for this particular thing, what I'm thinking is like, don't take the opportunity to co-opt the movement. As you educate yourself, you might be compelled to share what you've learned with your audiences. Definitely share, but what I am challenging you to do is to, you know, use your platform to amplify the voices of BIPOC people who are doing the work. Going to presentations, reading, you know, a couple of books does not make you an expert. And again, that kind of like is tied to other ways that white supremacy works in society, and, you know, taking things on and, you know, not necessarily giving credit to those underrepresented populations. And so what I would say is making sure that you amplify the voices that are doing the work in this space. Support Black businesses as well. Read books that are written by Black authors. And, you know, definitely also stand up for Black people, you know, in all of these pieces. Interrogate everything. This kind of ties into the education piece that I talked about before. And, you know, just thinking about if you're in a situation, asking yourself, like, what's happening here? How are people being marginalized in this situation? You have to, again, remember that we've all been, you know, indoctrinated into seeing the world in ways that uphold white supremacy. And you definitely need to interrogate that. The other piece to this that I definitely wanted to share about is, like, as you're educating yourself, we want to make sure that you're not engaging in work that is policing the way that Black people show up in these spaces, or policing the way that Black people are protesting. That is not the role of people who are coming into this work, especially because Black people, like, we've lived this situation, we know it, we've known it for hundreds of years, and some of the new folks just got there. So when you just get there, like, you do not have, I guess, the clout, I guess I would just use that word for lack of a better word, to interrogate that. Your job is to police other white people. So that would be my thought on that. Ask yourself, how are BIPOCs alienated? How can you bring folks into the fold? The biggest thing I want you all to know is to do something. But that is the biggest thing. Do something that will help marginalized communities. We're definitely at an impasse right now. We need people that are able to act because, again, this is a heightened time period, and there is a momentum that is going on now where I feel like change can happen, and we need allies that are willing to act in those cases. And then the last piece that I have is forge real relationships. For me, I think that racism really predicates on us not knowing each other, right? Keeping individuals separate and not being able to relate or understand each other's like point of view. And so I want to, you know, make it clear that this is definitely an opportunity for us to forge racial relationships, cross-ethnic relationships, and this is all in an effort to do better. But one of the things that I definitely want to say is it needs to be authentic relationships, right? Like, and it needs to be because you want to, not necessarily because, again, you're concerned about how it might look and that sort of thing. And this is going to be hard, right? And, you know, one of the things that I definitely want to say is that, you know, minoritized groups have had no choice in knowing about the dominant culture. However, you know, white people in general know very little about BIPOC communities, which is why there's so many people struggling right now with learning more about the racial unrest that's happening and things like that. And so it's not going to be easy, and you really will have to prove yourself as you go through, you know, trying to forge these relationships. And then, you know, I want to leave you all with this quote that I found from an article that I wanted to share with you all, and it's like two quotes, but it was all within one article. But it says, math is a universal language, and so is pain. And pain is a universal language. The pain we share is your point of entry into anti-racist practices. And it ends with, welcome to our language. And so I think for me, this kind of like really broke it down, like math is a universal language, right? And pain is as well. And I think what's happening now with the movement is that there was a lot of pain that was seen and experienced, especially with the way that George Floyd was murdered. And I think that really set the stage for what's happening now. And so like, as you're entering this anti-racist like work, I think part of what she's talking about is like, welcome to our language. And now that we have this shared language that we're all trying to be more proficient at, I think that will help us to move forward and to make real change in society. And that concludes my presentation. I wanted to leave you all with some of my contact information. If you wanted to reach out, the socials are specifically for Instagram, if you're on Instagram. But I know some people may not feel, I don't know, comfortable, like, you know, sharing some of the questions that they might have, but I definitely wanted to share my information just in case you wanted to reach out or had any questions. And so, Leah, I don't know if you, I guess I can stop sharing my
Yeah, if you want to leave it up for just another minute, Emmanuela, okay, so people can, yes. This was such an informative and important talk, and your aura and demeanor and your voice is very calming. So it was great to learn from you. Like, it felt you know, you make yourself and your voice so approachable that people want to learn, want to ask questions. Whereas some people, when they're talking about these issues, come out the gate kind of like, you know, shoving it down people's throats. So I do want to say that your demeanor and the way you come across even on Zoom is so calming. And that's important for these tough topics. And we have some wonderful questions that came out of them. And of course, they're multi-part questions and they're deep questions. So,
no problem.
yeah, absolutely. Let's get started with the first one. The first one came from Emily, M the Gem. Excuse me. She has a question regarding performative allyship. She actually just spoke with a friend about this the other day. Since there's so much conversation online these days, both due to the rise of social media, but also people socializing differently in, I love this, in these hashtag uncertain times. If someone is doing the work in many ways offline, is that enough? And at some point, is there a need to speak out on their platforms? But does that depend on size and audience? And if the answer is yes, that need exists, how do they walk the line between real impact and superficial performance?
That's a great question, Emily, or questions, I should say. I might have to have some other parts of it like repeated. Just
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So, if you're doing the work like outside of like online, look, my thing is like, I'm not here to judge whether or not it's enough or not. Like, I think you're going to have to like, you know, decide on what that feels like. And for me, if you're asking that question, then I would say that you should do more then. If you're asking those questions, then maybe deep down you're feeling like it's not enough. And so then I would say to trust that gut feeling. I don't think that there is any limit to like, oh, you have to have this amount of people following you to be able to share on your, like, the socials. I think if you're able to impact one person, that is a difference, right? So I think it's starting with one person and making your way to like pushing through the work. And so I would definitely encourage you to share as much as possible. I think one of the scary things though, which I don't know if this is part of what you're saying too, is that it's scary putting yourself out there, because then you're really gonna know who's not about the work and who are about it, right? And so that is scary when you see people in that light that you didn't know, like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that they felt this way or they thought this way, and who are they? And just know that you're not going to be able to save everyone, right? And I think you have to prepare yourself for that and kind of know, like, how do you want to attack that if it does happen? And it's okay to try to preserve your sanity. Like, if you need to block someone, or if you need to, you know, whatever the case might be. But I will say, I know there were some people who came, you know, under fire for, they'll post something and then they won't have the comment section like available. And so it's like, that says a lot, because then you probably know that a lot of your followers don't support that, right? So I don't know if I answered all of the elements.
Yep, you absolutely did. And I want to go off on a slight tangent here, but it's completely relatable to the whole thing. Brings us to the topic of cancel culture, where people are posting things and turning off comment. And cancel culture is so important because I was about it, to be very honest. I was like about it, cancel people, but then that doesn't leave room for people to have important conversations that may change someone's mind. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I am. It depends. Okay, I know what you're saying. Like, it depends. So, like, say, hopefully I'm not offending anyone, but like Goya, for those who don't know, like this CEO went to the White House, and like, I don't know. I canceled Like, I was like, I am never buying any more of their products. Like, I'm more about brands, but instead of people, because I feel like it doesn't leave room for people to grow. Like, and so that's my piece on that. And so like, I try not to engage in the cancel culture because like I said, it doesn't leave room for people to grow. But I hear you, Leah. Sometimes it's like, what?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I was about it. And then I'm hearing all these things that, no, you shouldn't be about it. And even, you know, Barack Obama is like, no, it's dangerous. And I'm, you know, all of a sudden I'm changing my mind. I'm like, oh shoot, I was wrong. So, you know, it's, sorry, went off on a little tangent there, but I thought it was completely relatable.
That was relatable, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm going to piggyback off of that with one of my questions, you know, talking about performative allyship, and you saying that if you're talking about it and doing things, share as much as possible. So you don't believe that there should be like you don't believe that there is like a correct or right cadence or frequency, right? It's just as much as you feel is right, you know?
Yeah. I think part of it is like bringing awareness. Like that is the biggest thing, right? Anything that we do in allyship is bring awareness, bring change. So if I'm posting this, is this going to bring awareness and bring change? Is this really for me? Is this going to make me feel better about myself? Then that shouldn't be like something that you share if it's associated with, you know, social justice.
Right, absolutely. Okay. So I have a question, another one from Erica. She said, I've heard so many strong perspectives on sharing your beliefs and feeling for the Black Lives movement on social media, or Black Lives Matter movement on social media. Some people say to share so you can help influence your circle, your people, and others not to share so you can leave space for Black people to speak themselves. Can you speak about these?
I think it's a balance, right? I think, you know, definitely share. I really think it depends on your audience, right? Share what it is, share what you want them to do. I think part of it is storytelling is going to help compel like people to act, right? And so however you're able to tell that story, whether it's like how you feel about this certain thing, but again, it's not like all about you, but like, can you believe that this happened? Here are ways that you can, you know, do something about it. And then also mixing in where you got it from. It could be as easy as like, thank you, whoever, for bringing this to my attention, right? Because then that amplifies where you got the information from. Or maybe they have shareable content that you could share on your platform. And so I think it's just a balance, and also thinking about, you know, again, what I keep saying again, is like, how is this bringing awareness to the cause?
Absolutely. So I have more of a specific question, actually. I was on a panel, a podcast panel. It's a video podcast and audio, of course. And it's 2 white male hosts. And I get on to the Zoom call. We're going to Zoom for the next 3 hours. And it's 3 Black creators and myself. And I was like, this is amazing. And throughout all the emails and communication, nothing was said that they were trying to promote, you know, BIPOC being on this. They just did it. And I went back to them afterwards and I was like, I am so proud of you guys, because they are very aware of their privilege. And they're very aware that they're 2 white males and they brought all BIPOC people. And the fact that I was there with 3 strong Black creators, I was like, this is wonderful. But is that something, do you think they need to go out to their social media and say, or the fact that they're just doing it and they're going to put it out there and they're going to continue to do it, is that enough in itself?
Here's the second part, because I think if you are saying it, then it comes out like some type of marketing, right? I think they acknowledge, I don't know what process they went through, but perhaps they're like, oh my gosh, we need to like diversify, like, or we want to use our platform to amplify these marginalized voices, right? And so that's a way to act, and that's a way to like use, you know, your platform to introduce people to voices that they probably never would have, you know, been introduced to, and doing it in a way, because I could see people like, oh, I don't want to listen to this, if they see like, oh, this is, we're bringing in, you know, 4 BIPOC creators. No, just say, they are marketing people, they are whatever, you know, the case might be in this space, and you're going to listen to their stories. And I think that's awesome that they were able to do that.
Yeah, actually, Emmanuela, they had 2 people, a Black woman and Black man creators. They brought them on, and they're like, Leah, come on, but someone dropped out. Do you know anyone? So I recommended Jeff from Chubby Diaries just because of the topics, not because he's Black. Yeah. And so the fact that, you know, I was able to bring him, and I was like, oh my gosh, wait, this panel is so diverse. So it kind of all worked out that way, because you were asking about their thought process. Like, I don't know that they went out, even their future panels being invited back to, like, they're not going out specifically, you know, trying to get BIPOC. It's just, who are the subject matter experts? That's who they're going after. So.
Which I love that they even asked you, like, do you know anyone?
Because
an awareness that they know, like, I don't know, or my cadence or my typical behavior is to go to this population, if that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I would love to know, like, what brands, like even travel brands, that you feel have supported and improved the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, correctly so far. What are some of the great things that certain brands and travel brands have done, or what are your favorite examples?
That's a good question. I actually feel like the travel industry needs to do a lot more work. A lot more work. Many of them didn't even acknowledge that this is even happening. So, you know, I think the 2 things that come to mind off the top of my head are She's Wonderful. I don't know if everyone has heard of that group, but they are a group for women travelers or travel enthusiasts. It's a community, and they were doing this before any of this happened. Like, I have always just been so impressed by they have like annual conferences and things like that. And they have always been diverse with the people that they bring in to speak. Also not looking at follower counts too, like, cause then you always end up with the, you know, largest groups always being represented. So that's one. I think I did some work with TripAdvisor recently, and they're having some like really good conversations around how they can even impact the vendors that are advertising with them, so that if they're not doing X, that they wouldn't be featured on their site. And so that's like actually taking money out of their pockets and really showing like where they stand and having like anti-racist conversations with their employees and things like that. And so I've been really impressed by, you know, kind of what they're doing. But some of the other brands, they're moving kind of slowly, which is, I mean, in some cases that's good, as long as they're like really asking thoughtful questions and making real impactful decisions moving forward. But I have been disappointed in general.
Yep. So we have a long way to go in the travel industry. A lot of work to do.
Yes.
And okay, so I'd love to know, and Erica actually posed this question, what are some of your favorite books, movies, Instagram profiles, any resources to follow and just learn more about the Black Lives Matter movement and how to grow as an ally?
Yeah, okay. So I read a lot of books, so I have a lot of book recommendations. One of them I would say is We Were 8 Years in Power by Ta-Nehisi Coates. That's a really good one, and it really goes back to like the history and how, you know, things, like how racism even came to be, and the systems that were put into place for that. How to Be an Anti-Racist, which is, you know, making the rounds with Dr. Ibram. I would also say Ain't I a Woman? Ain't I a Woman by Bell Hooks. And it talks about Black women as it relates to history of racism. That was a really good book as well. I have others that I can't really, they're like escaping me right now, but I have others. I can definitely, if you want to do an accompanying thing, if you send an email, I can like send you like a list. Yay, Erica's saying thumbs up. Yeah, I can send that as well. Yeah, they're really, really good books out there. People to follow. I know probably everyone's following Glow right now. Glow Graphics, I think is her at. Oh, can I share some podcasts too? Like I'm a big podcast person. One of them that I want to share is Code Switch. They have a lot of cool episodes on there that people might find insightful, for sure. I'm trying to see if I can find another one, but that's one of like my favorite ones right now. And then Intersectionality Matters, which is done by Kimberly Crenshaw, who, if you're doing some like research, you probably hear the term like intersectionality, and she is the one that coined that phrase.
I love that. I love podcasts, obviously. So these are great. And I've started listening to some Code Switch as well. So
yeah,
thank you for these recommendations. And I know Erica said we can send them out to the crew and everyone who attended today. So that will be wonderful. And then you can also add, you know, anything you forgot to mention just now. You can get those out to everyone. So, well, thank you so much, Emmanuela. This was a fantastic conversation and a really great learning experience. Like we said, we were all just nurtured by your voice and wanting to learn from you.
Thank you. I know, I always keep hearing that, like I have a radio voice.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it is.
It's very soothing. Podcast.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Wonderful. Well, thank you again for being present today and giving this presentation, and everyone, thank you for attending. We know this is an important topic and we hope you can walk away with some things and, you know, educate yourself and educate and inspire others around you. So just have some closing comments. So Nomadic Network events, you'll see we have Emmanuela's event in the top left here, and then we have our upcoming events. We have some happy hours today, Portland Travel Happy Hour, travel prep during the pandemic, how to improve your future travels, visiting the world's smallest country, Sealand, future of tour companies in a post-COVID world, and then we have a California travel happy hour next week, but you can just go to thenomadicnetwork.com/events to see all of our events for the next month or so. We just keep adding new ones. Again, like we mentioned at the beginning, if you feel that this community has brought value to you, you can be a part of our Patreon. All you have to do is hold your phone up, scan the QR code, and it pulls up the website. And then if you feel it's better to make a one-time donation, you can do that on the right side of the screen, hold your phone up, scan the QR code, and it'll bring all the information up. So we appreciate any support you can provide. And, you know, Emmanuela comes on, and all the speakers come on, and they do this out of the kindness of their heart. So the support is much appreciated. So once again, thank you all for being a part of our travel community. Emmanuela, you're so great. We'll send up a follow-up email with all these wonderful resources, and everyone have a wonderful Thursday.
you all.